partner, you must run. I have to go to another speaking engagement, but I don't want you to think that we're leaving out because we're not down like the brother. All right? Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Richard Muhammad. We're here to celebrate the life of Kwame Ture. And when you talk about Kwame Ture, you must talk about the All-African People's Revolutionary Party and what we stood for. Our party, of course, is a Pan-Africanist party, and we define Pan-Africanism as the total liberation and unification of Africa under United Socialist Africa. Kwame Ture moved to Guinea in West Africa, and he joined with Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré to begin to build this process as a member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. Now, in our party, we understand that culture is very important to the revolution. We understand clearly that any revolution must be a cultural one. Any revolution must use its culture, its cultural instruments to organize the people. Any revolution must clearly understand that culture is the container of our people's motivation, our people's ideology. In our organization, we study our people's culture. We practice our culture, we study our history, so that we be able to use these tools to further organize and liberate African people the world over. Now, what we want to do is we're going to invite our next cultural performing artist down to show us a little bit of African culture. This next group does African culture and specializes in some cultural attributes from the country called Guinea in West Africa, in which Kwame Ture resided for the last 30 years of his life, since 1969, and where our party, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, was originally based. So, our next act, the group is called Omawale Afrique. This group is very adept at being able to convey our culture here in the United States. And this group has learned a lot about our culture that exists in Africa. Because see, they know that we're Africans no matter where we at. We're Africans no matter where we at in the world, and we can do anything that Africans can do anywhere else. It's just a matter of learning and practicing, etc., etc. So while the group is getting together, I want to make a couple more announcements, if I may. Sister Ju. After this program is over, there's going to be a little reggae occurring at the Rhythm Room on Cedar and Taylor. That's in Cleveland Heights, in case you don't know where it is. Cleveland Heights. We have a few problems in Cleveland Heights at times. Those of us who live in Cleveland know about that. But anyway, if you enjoy reggae music, if you enjoy African music in general, we want you to go tonight after this program to the Rhythm Room and enjoy some music and participate with the brothers who are going to be playing some reggae. Brother Sebo is here in the audience. He's a part of that group that's going to be performing out there. And Brother Sebo is in going to be where people can participate, bring your own instrument, that kind of thing.
Well, I don't think so. It's a DJ performance tonight, and then the band will play from 10:30 to
Say that again, please.
It's a DJ playing most of the music, the band breaks, and the band.
to celebrate Brother Kwame's life, all of the things that he gave to all of us, the fact that he lived his life for all of us to have what we have today. There's no words that you can put on the recognition of his brother. There's so few that are truly committed. So we have to give thanks and praise for this brother, his life, his struggle, his work, his pain. We have to remember that his brother had pain, because when you see people in your own family that can't even relate, so while you're living your life to make life a better place for them, that's a lot of pain. And all the things that we know this brother had to endure during the era that he had to endure. I, unfortunately, was not there at that time, but the name Omawale, as I'm sure a lot of you here know, is the name that was given to Brother Malcolm when he went home. Omawale means the child who has returned. So Omawale, our free, is committed to returning to our culture, returning to our tradition, returning to our faith, returning to our lineage, returning to all of those wonderful things that were a part of us when we built the pyramids, or when we had ceremonies, and all of these wonderful accomplishments that we've had as a people. So, thank you, and we hope that you enjoy. The first dance we're going to do is called Sunu. Sunu is a funeral dance. We're going to do funeral Sunu. It's from Guinea. And after that, the children are going to come in and do a dance of the harvest, because we know that the seed that this brother has planted has made for a wonderful harvest for all of us. So the children are going to come out in cuckoo to celebrate the harvest. So we pray that all of you celebrate with us. But the first dance is the funeral Sunu. And of course, we touched for the brother here, because we always have to give thanks to come to our knees, just to say thank you for what you've committed to all of us. So as soon as you see a lot of dances and little performance, a lot of steps going to the foremost. The first step is coming down and it's cleansing things away. It's picking up all of the negative energy and it's throwing down frankincense, throwing down myrrh, throwing down roses, throwing down different essence like sage to cleanse as we come through the way to make way for the celebration of this brother's life, not of his death, but of his life. Amen. Ture. That's all right. But at any rate, we have a brother here who's a member of the American Indian Movement. He's also the chairperson of the Committee of 500 Years of Dignity and Resistance. You may have seen us down at the jail, the baseball field, getting arrested, demonstrating, etc. Maybe we come through here. Kwame, brother, here we got arrested back in April, demonstrating against that infamous symbol called Chief Bible and the name Indian. We tell people all the time it's the same thing as Black Sambo. So how can you as Africans wear that emblem, wear that name when you just got out of slavery and you just got rid of Black Sambo? Especially in light of the fact that when we was in slavery, the people who helped us out when we ran through plantation were the very people who occupied this land before European
end colonialism. He's been on tour with Kwame, worked with Kwame in terms of the trailer property treaties and other dynamic issues that we've been fighting for. I want to introduce to you Juan Raymond.
Chief Seattle said he wanted to speak to the Wachichu or the white man. Towards the end of the speech, he was talking about the people that have passed away. And he said, and to the dead, he said, dead. Did I say dead? There is no such thing as dead. There's only a passing of time into another world. And so I'm sure that our brother is always with us in that way. In our lifetime, we meet many peoples. We come across many strong people. And sometimes it's hard to let those strong people go. But it's a lesson for us. I remember I read a lot about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and later on Kwame Ture. I never got the pleasure to meet Kwame Ture until 1979 in Washington, D.C. There was at that time a vigil for Leonard Ture in trying to get another trial for him. In 1979, we burned the American flag, that Yankee rag, in front of the FBI building in Washington, D.C. And another revolutionary brother, John Fidel, was wearing that flag down before it got burned. And it was 24 hours later, after that flag was burned, and his wife was pregnant, 3 of his children, and his mother-in-law were also burned in Bethlehem, Nevada. So it was heavy price for that flag. But John Fidel understood. He knew because this was a revolutionary act. And we know that the oppressor is always going to come after us to steal and fear into us. But we must be aware that the only thing to fear is the fear itself. Kwame Ture, I would say, was a revolutionary all his life until the moment he passed. He was very revolutionary, and he was for the African people. He always made it very clear that he was for the African people. But he was for the African people in Africa, to take Africa and liberate Africa. And in North America, or the United States, our homeland that we call Turtle Island, that he recognized that this was our homeland. And he was in solidarity with us all the time in our homeland. And if it came to reparations, we know that Stokely Carmichael would put us in the front lines. Kwame Ture was a very strong brother. I traveled with him in California. I ran into him various times throughout our travels. And whenever I encountered him, he always brought me up to the front to speak. He always had his arms around me. He was a very strong brother, good friend, good comrade, and we'll all miss him. But he was one of the many. And this revolution must continue. And it's an example that we must follow for the future generations. We must liberate not only our physical bodies, but first of all, we must liberate our minds. We must liberate our spirits. And when we liberate our spirits, that means that we give up the addiction to colonialism. That means that we willingly give up
any form of oppressive means that had been used against any people, such as Chief Wahoo and the Cleveland Indians, the Land Braves, Washington Redskins, so forth and so on. So, in all true solidarity, may the Great Spirit bless Kwame Ture, all African people, and all indigenous people, and all human beings throughout the world in their struggle for liberation. Thank you.
Now, when we start these demonstrations again, we expect to see some of y'all down there when we go support Native people to get their land back, get rid of that racist Islam, Chief Wahoo, and the name Indians. That's right. In 1966, of course, he called for black power. By the time 1967 rolled around, SNCC was in trouble. We believe that the Zionist forces began to destroy SNCC. And at that point in time, SNCC said, hell no, we won't go. That was the rallying cry against the Vietnam War. Kwame proceeded to make links with what would become the Black Panther Party for self-defense. In fact, Kwame had organized the first Black Panther Party in Miles County, Alabama, 1965, that had the symbol of the Black Panther. When Huey Newton and other people came along, they talked to Kwame about using the emblem, etc., and they asked the remnants of SNCC to merge with the Black Panther Party, and Kwame became the prime minister in the Black Panther Party, I believe it was in late 1967. The next speaker we have here, he's a former member of the Black Panther Party, and he worked diligently in the Black Panther Party and many other organizations, and now he's here in Cleveland, working to support the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. He spoke at African Liberation Day a number of times, etc. We're glad to have him here, working here to help us organize the African United Front of Cleveland, working to help free Abdul Haq. The list goes on and on and on. Brother Abdul Haq.
Name of God and grace and mercy. I bid you in peace, be upon you. The other thing that I would like to say, the All-African People Revolutionary Party from St. Louis, I was there, and we had the same service there in St. Louis Saturday, and they said they greeted me from St. Louis. Also, Sister Connie Tucker was here, and I spent yesterday morning with Sister Connie Tucker, and when she went back home, she called me and talked for an hour. She was one of the sisters that helped get blood for Brother Kwame Ture, and she also traveled and went to Cuba with her brother Kwame Ture, and her and I was in the same organization when Kwame Ture came to Florida. The organization was called JOMO, a militant organization, and that was in the early 60s. The other thing that I heard a lot of people say, but you really want to give tribute to Brother Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture's whole theme was organize, organize, organize. See, that's how we can keep him living. Organization is the highest form